días, hablando en español, si quieren, como es en español. Hi, good morning. I hope you've all had a good day. It's a birding day. I wonder how many of you were out there counting birds this morning. This room was full at 8 o'clock, so I'm wondering if you really were birding or whether you were actually just... No. Well, first of all, my name is Ian Davidson. I'm representing Pelee Island Bird Observatory. I'm one of the board members. And it's my great pleasure to welcome you. We have an absolutely full house. This is even fuller than last year, so this is impressive. We might have to move to a bigger venue, but it shows a great interest in this thing. So we have a great speaker today, and I'll just talk to you a bit about him. But first of all, some housekeeping. If you haven't found the washrooms and you really need to go, don't go down that way. Go back up the stairs and there's bathrooms on either side. So that's important. If there's an emergency, there's doors. There's ways out of here. I think that's it for the housekeeping. I'm truly grateful to be here. I've been part of the Pelee Island Bird Observatory now for, I think, 3 years. And this is my second time here. Extraordinary place. Pelee Island, if you didn't know, is what we consider a key biodiversity area. It's globally recognized and extraordinarily important for birds, migratory birds in particular. And if you didn't know as well, there are about 100 million birds flying through this space on their trajectory north or south. So it's a really busy area, and the island itself extraordinarily important, linked up, of course, with Point Pelee. Before I go further, I want to shout out to a number of people. First of all, our sponsors, Butch Demers and Kim Berthatel, I believe, from the Pelee Wings Nature Store. They are our sponsors for today. So, if you're heading back out, not on Sunday, I'm not sure if they're open, but make sure you stop in that store. They've got some absolutely wonderful stuff. Another shout out to Samiko and Graham Gibson Jr., who are here with us today. Perhaps one of the founders of this organization, are based on Pelee Island and doing some absolutely fabulous work with some. Another shout out to my fellow board members. PIBO continues to grow at an accelerated rate. I'm not going to name names, but perhaps my fellow board members on Pelee Island Bird Observatory could stand up. And then finally to all of you, colleagues, friends that I've met here at birding and doing whatever you do, it's just a great pleasure to be here again. And as I was saying, Pelee Island is an extraordinarily important place. And one of the things that we do at Pelee Island Bird Observatory is we're really concerned and interested in the monitoring of birds. And of course, Graham and Samiko have been doing that with many volunteers over the number of years. That data goes into a bigger data set, which allows us to understand what's happening to bird populations, not only in Canada, but throughout the Western Hemisphere. So incredibly important. PIBO is also involved in the conservation of some sites and in places around this island, and have been actively involved in that for a period of time. And last of all, and really important, really telling the story of Pelee Island, Point Pelee, and the whole Essex County, the tremendous importance of this area, and the need for conserving the limited habitat that's here for migratory birds that are moving through this area. So thank you. So we have today an absolutely fabulous speaker who, on his migrations here, hit a number of obstacles, but he landed safely on the island, and we're very fortunate to have with us Rodrigo Lopez. So welcome, Rodrigo. A wonderful presentation. I've actually been going through the presentation before and I absolutely love it. So I can't wait to actually see the voices that go with that presentation. But let me tell you a little bit about Rodrigo. Hopefully my daughter doesn't call me on my iPhone, so because it will block out on us. But here we go. He comes from San Miguel de Allende in Mexico, of course. where he is a tireless advocate of birding, conservation, and environmental education. He is, I read a terrible birder, but it actually says he is a terrific birder. I didn't know this. He is a terrific birder and a tour guide for birding trips throughout Mexico, and still a relatively, as you know, still a relatively undiscovered birding area. He believes that bird watching tourism is an activity that raises people's awareness about their natural heritage and the need to preserve it for future generations. He is an early proponent of ethical birding and always engages with local guides, most often indigenous guides, on his tours. It says again here, he's a terrific birder, so it must be so. Which is why he was chosen as PIBO's 2024 guest birder. In 2020, Rodrigo founded the Central West Mexico Birding Society to create a forum for communication and collaboration between individuals and groups involved in bird conservation. He has been on the board of directors of Audubon in Mexico for the past 9 years, and he is one of the creators of Audubon's Niños y Naturaleza, which translates as kids and nature, and also Salvar un Árbol, which translates as Save a Tree programs. So for several years, Rodrigo has been a friend of PIBO, our partner in Mexico for the Graham Gibson Prismáticos project, which distributes donated binoculars and scopes to classrooms, to field workers, and conservation groups in the state of Guanajuato, Mexico. And this winter, he was featured as a guest at our first sunset cocktail party. So if you're ever in that part of the world next year, sometime February, March, I'm not sure exactly when, you'll find out about that cocktail party, and that raises funds for good work that is undergoing down there to conserve birds. And finally today, Rodrigo's talk has been published as a limited edition, hand-printed chapbook called The Rose-bellied Bunting, The Battle for Habitat, part of the Birders on Bird series produced by Woodbridge Farms, Books and PIBO. So without any further ado, Senor Don Lopez,
Okay.
the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm going to drink his water. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I was talking to a friend yesterday, and he told me, if you're nervous, think about a precious moment in your life where you were really happy. The first thing I said, well, I think I know what I can say, right? But now that I was thinking about it earlier, I remember that the day, after a 5-year wait time, when we were given, well, our children's birth certificates, because we adopted kids, after 5 years process, that was a big time, and that's a happy place, right? So thank you, Tom. And also, I think that another really happy moment for me would be today. Because, I've been involved in birding, I've been involved in environmental education, and I would never have dreamt about being here with this audience. And there are many reasons for that. I will try to explain as I go, but I really feel very fortunate, and I'm very appreciative and thankful. Margaret, thank you. And thank you also to Marilyn and Wayne in Mexico. Well, here we go. The Rose-bellied Bunting. The battle for pinch point habitats. Or I would say, how a non-migrant bird from Mexico is relevant to us, to you. As you can see, the Rose-bellied Bunting is a champion of the attractive looks. It is a micro-endemic species. It's a threatened species. Yet, its true importance relies in which the area where it lives in Mexico is not only important for the bunting and other wonderful species of birds, but also it's an important migratory flyway, pinch point, just like the site we're about today. Next. So the Rose-bellied Bunting, as its name suggests, has a reddish pink mottling on the chest, becoming salmon pink on the belly and vent. Note the diagnostic overall electric blue coloration, a well-defined broken white iron, I would say black lores or black base of the bill, and gray bill on legs. A subtle change from deep blue on the head to turquoise blue on its tail, and a hint of green on the primaries when it's hit with the right light. Its scientific name is Passerina rositae, which point to us, its family, the passerines. It is overall larger than an average bunting. This is 13.5 centimeters, 5.5 inches, and it's by far my favorite Mexican bird, although it's difficult to choose. Now, how is the female? How do the females look like? And as you know, it's common in the animal world, and perhaps in other wildlife, that the females benefit from a less attractive, shiny feather coloration. Some versions point that this is crucial to protect them, facilitating their hiding efforts from predators during breeding season. Rosita's bunting, as it was formerly called, is not an exception. As you can tell in the graphic, this female is much drabber, but it still presents the diagnostic broken white eye-ring, and sometimes a variable pink blush to the other parts. And may this photograph be illustrative of their diet. As you can see, these green berries in the corner is part of their diet. They also feed on seeds of grasses. Next. Seeing them together in the proper habitat, its shape, bills, proportions, and eye-ring made them an obvious pair. Note the intense stare she gives to him. Perhaps for the lack of food in the nest for the fletchings, it sort of reminds me of my wife. I love you. Although its appearance and its name suggest this passerine belongs to the bunting family, the truth is that this charismatic micro-endemic bird belongs to the family of the cardinals. Next one. And here is how the Rose-bellied Bunting compares with other representatives and well-known members of the Cardinalidae family. On the left, we have the boldly colored blue grosbeak, whose range is limited to the northern states of the USA and, of course, Mexico. And the more common, but not less beautiful, northern cardinal. Please note the resemblance of the beak, shape, and particularly a characteristic black base of the bill, which in the case of the bunting is more subtle. Perhaps the reason why it was named at first a bunting is because it is smaller in size, very similar to a bunting's size. Next. Now, the Rose-bellied Bunting habitat is located in a region named the Isthmus, and the Isthmus always means the narrowest part of something. In this case, the narrowest part of Mexico, the Isthmus of Tehuantepec, in the state of Oaxaca. This is southwest from Pelee Island, as the pins indicate, but it's right on the path where the migratory flyways touch each other. This bird is described as a microendemic because its range of distribution is limited to a very small area, as you can see in this orange patch. The Rose-bellied Bunting is indeed among my favorite birds, but it's not only because it's so beautiful, and not only because it's a distinct representative of an important and brittle habitat, and also because that region that the Rose-bellied Bunting calls home is the region where my father grew up, an area from which I have fond memories of my childhood. I didn't grow up there, but we would go there often to see my family. Next. Now, when you venture on a birding expedition to find the Rose-bellied Bunting in Oaxaca, you will notice that they prefer hilly areas between 150 to 800 meters above sea level. Next. Semi-arid thorn forests. Next. Dense deciduous forests. And next. Semi-humid deciduous gallery woodlands. So these all names kind of sound the same, but the habitat is different. I took this photograph in an area known as Tolistoque Hill in the municipality of Juchitán this March. And this is one of the few sites where we can find this most rare and beautiful bird. And if you had the opportunity to get yourself a copy of my chapbook, this is the exact same location where I saw the Rose-bellied Bunting for the first time back in March 2015. Next. As I said last March, I was there with a group of 5 Canadians and 2 birders from the US, and a local guide and myself. And we embarked on this quest to find the Rose-bellied Bunting. Here our adventure group is on the path that leads towards a water spring, the water spring where the Rose-bellied Buntings are regularly seen. This is during their morning baths. Please note that the forests described in the image, next, and next, thank you, are not forests, and I would say the Canadian sense of a forest, but they are slow growth, thorny bushes, and also medium high trees about 7 meters high that lose their leaves during dry season, which is from October to April. But if you see the area that has greener foliage, that area belongs, of course, to the gallery woodland because it's closer to the water. Next, please. Now, this is the end of that trail, and you can see this kind of a cave and a small pond, and that is called Tolistoque Water Spring. And that's the area where I saw the Rose-bellied Bunting for the first time. So that was very magical. Next one. I remember that when we reached this site 9 years ago, I really was full of excitement because we did not only saw one Rose-bellied Bunting, but we saw about 13 of them. And you can imagine with that kind of dull, kind of tan color background, these blue walls would really stand out. So that was really special. And well, maybe you can recall in your memories of birding about these special experiences when you finally find a much sought after bird, how emotional it is, how special it is, right? Next one, please. And well, this is our friend, the Rose-bellied Bunting, after a nice morning bath. I remember we took this photograph, and of course, the Bunting was very curious about the presence, right? He was wondering, what is the people doing here? No? Now, let me also share with you. Next, please. Let me tell you one thing. One of the interesting things that it has been discovered about the Rose-bellied Buntings during nesting season is that not only do they nest in the canyons and on the hills, but also that in many of the nests they found snake skin. And there have been studies made on different species that use, of course, the skin of the snake to deter predators. And the studies have shown that the ratio or the percentage of success is more than 50%. So there are 50% more chances of success to have a nest if they have snake skin, which I really find fascinating. I don't know if it's smelling, I don't know what's the situation there, but there's something special, and these guys, the Rose-bellied Buntings, do the same. Now, the Rose-bellied Bunting is not the only charismatic bird that inhabits the semi-arid forests. There are other equally interesting resident species sharing the same habitat on the Pacific slopes of the southern Isthmus of Tehuantepec. And I would like to show you some examples. Next, please. The Citrullian trogon would be one of them. Next one, please. It's a fairly large jay. It might look kind of small position, but it was really funny last March seeing that jay doing what it's doing. The first time I ever see that, hanging, like a monkey, and probably was having fun. And look at the berries, same berries that the buntings like to eat. Next one, please. Normally told me Canadians like their woodpeckers. So you should go with one at least. Unfortunately, there's a really wonderful woodpecker that is a lineated woodpecker. And next, please. The striking orange-breasted bunting. And the reason why I didn't make the presentation based on that bird is because that bird, the range of that bird is wider, is bigger, so you can find it throughout West Mexico. But all the time fighting with my Mexican birding friends, I'm trying to defend the Rose-bellied Bunting. Because it's not only pretty, and the colorations are kind of odd, but the habitat of the Rose-bellied Bunting, I think it's in more danger than a wider range, which is the range of the orange-breasted bunting. But yeah, I agree. It's super beautiful, Okay. I'm sorry, guys. Well, I believe this habitat, as I was just saying, has a greater relevance because it's in the Park flyway pinch point. Shall the following slides help me illustrate this? Next, please. The area that the Rose-bellied Bunting calls home is also home to one of the more biodiverse areas in Mesoamerica. You see the orange dot there, this is the area where the bunting lives, and the upper part, we have a forest called Chimalapas. And it's one of the best preserved forested areas in the Americas. The level of endemism in the area suggests this is a distinct biogeographic province in America. The Isthmus of Tehuantepec is, of course, a biologically important region that supports high alien species, richness, endemism, in particular the dry lowlands of the Pacific slope. Next one, please. Next one? Okay. As you can see, next one, and next one, please, and the other one, and Well, as you can see here, guys, this area of the isthmus has a very strong influence of the Gulf of Mexico and the Pacific. And not only that, you can see in the upper purple line the Sierra Madre Occidental, which finishes right there. Then you have on the west Sierra Madre, Oriental, and this is Sierra Madre Occidental, which then turns into Sierra Madre Sur, and they join there. Next one, please. Then you have the flyways that come from the Pacific. Next one. The flyways that go on the Gulf of Mexico. Next one. And this particular flyway or particular route, which I'm going to talk more about, I'm not going to even put a name to it. Next one. And on top of that, I mean, for me, it's enough to know that this is where everything farms. This is I would say, the northernmost, narrowest portion of land. But not only that, we're talking about a very important transition point between the Nearctic region and then the tropical region. So that, that overlapping or that transition zone makes it also unique. Next one. Now, let me see. Let me do this. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Over on this side, you might be able to see, of course, the Sierra Madre that I mentioned, but also we have a system of coastal flatlands. This system of coastal flatlands is very important because it generates a lot of thermals. You know thermals? And the thermals are super important for the migration of birds, specifically about the raptors. By having all this heat, it creates a column of hot air, which is like an easy ride for the raptors. And what they do all over this route, they go up, and then they speed down. They go up again, and they speed down. And that's how these birds can migrate, hundreds or thousands of kilometers, saving a lot of energy. Very similar to what the monarch butterfly do, right? And thanks to this system of coastal flatlands on the Gulf of Mexico, at the end of it, right in the isthmus, is where we have scientific stations that study the migration mainly of raptors. We're not talking about raptors only. We're talking about songbirds, dragonflies, butterflies, all of them. Beautiful birds from Canada and the US, making this place, of course, super important. Next. Now, next please. Next. Okay. And another one. So, much research has been done on the Gulf of Mexico side. There's an organization called Pro Natura Veracruz, which is partner of BirdLife International. And also, they have received support from Hawkwatch International. So by having those bird observatories there, scientists have been able to track the season of the migration for raptors. Next one. And next one. Another one. Another. Two more. So I should have added that movement thing. So what happens here is that every year during the studies or surveys of the raptors in this place, they count an average of 4.5 million raptors. And if you visit the area on a good day, which it depends, of course, on the weather, they can count in a single good day up to 400,000 raptors. That's why they call this place the River of Raptors. If you go there on a good day, you can actually see these lines, raptors going across the sky, which is really phenomenal. And we want to preserve that, right? Nonetheless, and this is part of my case here, the problem that I see is that there is infrastructure, funding, studies made in this area. And I want to think that, in general, there's an assumption that the raptors continue across the Yucatan Peninsula to the south. Yet, because there is almost or no research at all on the Pacific side of the isthmus, we don't know, and we're missing a lot of data that has to do about how many of those millions of birds actually go across the isthmus towards the Pacific, crossing the Rose-bellied Bunting habitat. But just as a worrisome piece of information, 99% of our swings and hawks go across the isthmus, across Rose-bellied Bunting habitat, and continue south. So we don't know how many more species go through there, but every time, guys, that we go to this area to bird, it is insane. And it really reminds me a lot of Pelee Island. Because you go there with the right, weather and everything and time of the year, and you see clouds of birds coming. Caesar-tailed flycatchers. We were there and there were about 50 orioles. I mean, it's insane. And that's only, and that's not counting the wading birds, the water birds. This place is really hot on birds. It's really one of the hot spots in the country for birding, of course. Now, about the bad news. In very recent years, the local population of short-tailed hawks has disappeared. There are no more. If you look at PIBO records, there are no short-tailed hawks in the area. And so that also, I think, sends a very bad signal about what's going on in that particular place, which maybe I would not be talking to you about unless it had importance for our short birds, the birds that migrate through there. Next, please. Windmills. What makes the Bunting's territory a great flyway for many species of migrant birds, unfortunately, also makes it a perfect place for the windmills. Sadly, when birds and bats are close to the blades, and that I was told this by one of the researchers of the area, the windmill generates a vacuum. Sometimes it's not even necessary for a bat or a bird to touch it, but it makes the bird implode. So, yeah. So one of the good news I can share with you is that based on the few and recent studies made about the Rose-bellied Bunting, they discovered, or the conclusion was that they do nest on the hills. People thought they only nest in the canyons. And because they only nest in the canyons, let's level these forests and put more windmills. So, good news is that the government is listening. Developers are listening. So we tell them, wait a second, there are these crucial important species, not only the species, but it's also a flyway for migratory birds. We need to preserve this, right? Now, next please. There are a couple of important training projects in Mexico happening at the moment. One, and probably the most known, is the Mayan train, which has been developed and built for, tourism purposes. Not to be confused with this other train. The government just inaugurated a new train route that runs from the Gulf of Mexico to the Pacific across the Rose-bellied Bunting habitat, across the flyway of our migratory birds. And well, you would say, okay, the train, it's not a big deal. Well, not really. This train project is super important because I don't know if you've heard, but specifically this year, the Panama Channel or Canal didn't have enough water. It seems like it's drying up because important part of the functionality of the Panama Channel is the reservoirs of fresh water. Because many people that I have talked to think they're just cutting a channel between the two oceans. No. Those ships have to go up in altitude, and up in altitude, and up and up and up, and then go across the continent to get to the other side. So with that maybe not with that in mind, I would be surprised. But because the government of Mexico wants to tackle some of that business, they have recently finalized, inaugurated this route for cargo, which has a big potential of becoming one of the most important commercial routes that we have ever had. Of course, with that comes development. Next, please. And this is already on our government's website. So the bids for federal contracts are already on and running. And so I can see how, with this development, we can look towards affecting, of course, negatively these habitats. Yeah. Thank you. Now, that's not the only issue. Of course, last year we had, according to scientists, we had the highest number of hurricanes generated on the Pacific, and most of them were, not most of them, but many of them were the biggest in history. Also, the Acapulco port and tourism destination was destroyed. I mean, we Mexicans couldn't believe that. It's a lot of infrastructure, and it was pretty much destroyed. So, if we add these variables, for me, it's very hard to stay optimistic. But I'm hoping that by generating data, we can help with information for developers or the government to do it in a more sustainable way. Next one, please. This area is, and culturally speaking, it's inhabited by an indigenous group called the Zapotecs. Even though in Oaxaca there are other ethnic groups, the Zapotecs are the most important or most relevant because this is the cultural or endemic group that has been there for millennia. I'm talking about almost 4,000 years. My roots, as I say, are Zapotec. It is a very peculiar culture because it is matriarchal. They have, for, I would say, I don't want to say centuries, but for decades, they have always practiced a third gender. So you have your grandma or your mother, they would say, I'm so blessed because my son or my daughter is gay. Because they have a specific role in the society. So it is a completely different Mexico. And maybe you remember Frida Kahlo. Frida Kahlo's mother was born there. That's why Frida Kahlo would wear those very peculiar attires, which belong from this area. But also, this area is known for feeling really proud of their roots. And what I'm trying to make a case for is to appeal to the pride they feel about themselves being so unique. And say, hey guys, guess what? Not only you are unique, but you have a unique bird that we need to protect. And along with the bird, we need to protect its habitat. Next one, please. And well, that's my mom and my dad. The reason why I'm showing them here, I told my mom. My dad's gone, but I told my mom, Mom, I'm going to make you famous. What happens is this is a house where my dad grew up when he was a kid. And right now the house is abandoned. Fortunately, my brothers and I, we are now, responsible. My mom's going to pass this along to us very much, but the point is that right now there's nobody there. And what I would like to propose as a perfect solution is to assign this property to be used as a scientific site. So where researchers can go and stay. And we can generate the data needed to protect the area. Not only to preserve the Rose-bellied Bunting, but pretty much to generate the data, the scientific data we need to protect the habitat that is of such an importance for the flyway of the migratory birds. Next one. Another key element that I think is, of course, environmental education. And of course, I want to bring up the wonderful Prismaticos program that PIBO has launched, the Grand Gibson Prismaticos project, which consists in collecting used binoculars and then are sent to Mexico so we can have resources and binoculars for the teachers and environmental educators that are focused on children. And I think we need to do that also in the business. And I must say, although things are changing, but still as a country, and in terms of a culture of birding or a culture of caring and the contemplation of birds, Mexico is in diapers. And that's very sad for me to acknowledge. But if you go to Mexico and you go to a market, guess what? Maybe you're going to find people selling songbirds. How do we make it to turn them, because they know a lot about birds, more than the average Mexican, into bird guides, into, educators, have an option, right? So I think crucial part of this would be the education and specifically tapping grassroots into the organizations and the children that live in this area of Mexico, in the Isthmus. Next one. And, well, just a little bit of optimism. There are recent records out of the distribution range for the Rose-bellied Bunting. And for me, the one that is more interesting is the one below. Because that purple point here, it's in the biosphere reserve of El Cielo. This is Chiapas. And El Cielo is one of the best protected biosphere reserves or natural protected areas in the country. So if the area gets, destroyed, hopefully not, we can think that they might move. But the Rose-bellied Bunting is not alone. And that's the point that I want to stress and address. We want to keep this flyway healthy for our migratory birds, which is how this really can resonate with my audience, guys, with you. And well, next one, please. Thank you. A 2018 study in the Wilson Journal of Ornithology concluded that the microendemic species like the rositas are at greater risk of extinction because of their small populations and limited distribution. They studied little-known microendemic birds, being the Rose-bellied Bunting one of them. And they found that in the Rose-bellied range, there was on average less than 1 bird per hectare. Hillsides are now the major reservoirs for all of these species in this world report. And long-term, conservation is crucial if these microendemics are to survive on this Sierra Tolistok. Next one. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was absolutely superb presentation on your work in that part of the isthmus, the conservation efforts that you're undertaking and other people are absolutely fundamental to not only experience but also the biodiversity of that area. I'm going to open it up. I'm cognizant that the ferry leaves at 12 and that a number of you are trying to get onto that ferry. But if there are some questions that you might have, Rodrigo, please, we would love to hear them. I'm sure he has answers or comments.
Are there any times that the wind turbines are stopped during peak migration of raptors? No, 24/7.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If there's wind, they're gone.
They're gone.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that you are very soon going to have a presidential election,
Yeah.
and one of them is quite far ahead of the others,
Yes.
and that she is very much in favor of making more and more train routes.
Well, my understanding from first-hand sources is that this lady, Claudia, despite this very clear plan they have to develop the trains, like the one in central Mexico, by the way, Querétaro, Mexico City, she's also a serious proponent of conservation.
Oh.
So I would not believe that if it weren't because a friend, one of the leaders of this research, has worked with her while she was mayor in Mexico City, and she told me she's serious. And we're hoping that, because I don't see how all the other candidates will win,
No.
and at least it will be an improvement. And will be more attention for conservation. So we're hopeful, despite the development, because what we want to do is, okay, there's going to be development, we're not going to stop it, but how do we work to have these areas declared natural protected areas? So there are the funding, right, and the policies and the rules, so it is not totally destroyed. I'm hoping. Thank you.
Rodrigo, I have a question for you concerning the conservation. So you were here. PIBO is very interested and very cognizant that we can't just work locally. We need to be thinking about the flyways and conservation along the entire flyways, correct? And I'm just wondering, you're up here, you're visiting us, you've seen Pelee Island, you understand what Pelee Island Bird Observatory has been doing. We're really keen to support activities along the flyways for shared species, which you spoke about. How can this group and or others support the work in your area? What specifically can we do as people to move you forward? You talked about prismaticos, and
Yes.
sharing of binoculars and things like that. What else is it that we can do?
Well, first of all, I must say that by you being here, you're already helping. Because it allows me, representing people and habitat, to address the point. So for me, it's a big gift already, and thank you. Yet, I'm not talking the specifics. Of course, we can think about not only funding for the research, but we have no experience developing these kind of projects. So, all the advice to make a plan so this thing could work. And if you say, okay, Rodrigo, would like to donate binoculars, or we would like to pitch in, I would ask you to help me do it through PIBO. Because I think I'm close, kind of under their wings, based on their experience and care for shared birds, and of course in need of this help. I hope that responds.
Thank you.
So could we set up a dedicated fund within PIBO? We'll discuss that later.
I think that was a comment, not a question.
Yeah, a follow-up question. How much of the land in the flyway is government or private?
There is an important patch, which is the Chimalapas region, that is already a natural protected area. But it's like the ham and the sandwich, right? Veracruz, the Chimalapas, which are shared between Veracruz and Oaxaca, and then the rest, not really. Not really. There might be some protection, maybe at municipal level, and also, but I mean, that's not enough. I think it's important because as development is coming full force, by the way, experts say that, and have been saying in the last 10 years, the best place to invest if you want to invest in Mexico, guess where? The Isthmus. And that's why, ta-da, we have the train. So I'm really, really like, very nervous about what's about to happen. So I think we need to speed up in order to try to work to get designations for these areas to be protected. And maybe it's not the whole thing, but at least we have these islands, right? From which the birds can hop one place to the other and they cross safely to the south.
But it's not just the government that can protect it, right? I'm trying to get at, is there room for private protection of
There is.
property?
There is. And it's important for me to share with you guys that, different from other countries, most of the natural protected areas in Mexico, about more than 75%, are community owned. And because of that, it's why, I'm going to mention an example, that's why forests are in such a good shape. Because the people that own them, they're there. So we have less fires, we have more sustainable timber, So it's a little bit different from what you would expect to hear. Like maybe they, by not having knowledge, but they know the forests very well. So I think it's a matter of working with the people too. Or maybe to start with, we need to work with the people, right? The locals. And make an influence, in their committees they call ejidos. So they can commit to conservation, and preserving the flyway. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I answer? Following that, with more nature tourism, more bird-based nature tourism with, archaeology
Yeah.
and Malay sauce and.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would thank you for bringing that up, because that's always part of my discourse. Come to Mexico. Come to Mexico, because by you visiting and choosing a local company that runs tour in a sustainable way, I can give you a list, or I can give you my card. Then people, the locals, see you, and the landowners say, "Hey, we have these visitors. We should not cut these trees. We can make an income instead of cutting them by having, sustainable tourism visitors or visits. We should preserve that, And that's only to start. But if we start to finding ways to give them a compensation for the environmental services they provide, carbon, all those things, I think it could be a nice plan, But thank you. I think ecotourism is crucial.